Ait, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay,
So
okay.
sorry. I'm still in the subway, so the connection is like unpredictable. Nice to
Okay.
meet you, Malik and Miles.
No worries. Um, I hope we just have 1 minute to start. Other members will find us along the way. I understand today it's a weekend, it's a Saturday, and okay, we have many people registered, but I see they are coming in slowly, but no worries. For those who will not manage to make it, they will follow our recording if at all Miles and Malik are okay with it. Yeah. So I take this opportunity to welcome you all today, the 28th of September 2024, on SynBio4ALL Africa webinar, where we are hosting Malik and Miles from the US. I will not talk much about them because we have them here physically, so they will give us more about their introduction and what they do. Yeah, and I hope this will be a very fruitful webinar for everyone who has joined in. Just keep on, don't leave, because it's going to be full of learning a lot, and it can help you anytime, even in future or now, with whatever you're planning. So at this moment, I would like to welcome Malik and Miles. I don't know who will introduce himself first, but you're welcome on the call. And I wish you a successful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Malik.
My name is Miles. Thank you for having us here today.
Yes, thank you so much. And so, Miles, if you can share the slides, and we'll jump right into some introductions. As you know, and today, so I'll say a bit more in a second, but in short, we are current PhD students at MIT. We have quite a bit of experience, not just in being PhD students, but also in applying to graduate school in general. And we're happy to share some of that knowledge with you all. And I'll just say, as an initial note, not only do I hope that you all can take good things away from this, but we not only ask, but we encourage you to spread this information around your peers and colleagues, just around various processes and different misconceptions, as we know that the PhD process in the US has some key differences to maybe other parts of the world. So let's get started. So that's a little bit about us. My brother and I are originally from New Jersey, which is a state in the U.S. very close to New York City, on the East Coast, and that's where we did most of our public schooling, our primary schooling. After that, we went to MIT for graduate school. Now, for undergraduate school, excuse me, when we graduated in 2022. We majored in biological engineering, which at MIT is one of the primary majors for doing synthetic biology, but there are some other programs as well. And we also minored in African diaspora studies, learning different things about the continent, as well as kind of like Black American studies in the U.S. We kind of always knew we wanted to get a PhD very early on. There was a program that MIT offered that basically helped students learn about the PhD process. And so since our second year in undergrad, we've been kind of preparing to get to apply for PhD. And then when we eventually did our senior year, our fourth years, we got into many places. I believe we applied to 6 schools, and we got at least to the interview stage of all of them, and got final admissions into 5 of them, including MIT, Stanford, University of California, Berkeley, and some others. And ultimately, we decided to actually come back to MIT and stay for their biological engineering PhD program, to which we are now beginning our third years in that program. And in addition to research, I also want to point out that we have been in the past what we call these BEAP, or biological engineering application assistance program mentors. And so what that means is that we work with the graduate admissions team in our program, and also, learn that process in a bit more depth, which is why I think we'll be able to share some good knowledge with you today. As a brief aside, as for some other stuff that my brother and I are a part of, if you go next, we also do some science communication, primarily through social media. Here's a little screenshot of our TikTok page, but we also do stuff on YouTube and Instagram. And we like to do STEM content, just making either jokes, skits, or a little explanation or mini lesson videos, just trying to increase the awareness and engagement in science, as well as we engage in our local communities in various outreach endeavors. Going a little bit backwards into our research experience, Miles, if you want to talk about what our undergrad was like.
Yes, so during our undergraduate years at MIT, our first year in 2019, we were a part of iGEM, a program I know some of you might be familiar with, the International Genetic Engineering Machine Challenge. And we had a project revolved around trying to create use synthetic biology to create cell-cell communication between an engineered sender cell and native immune cells, neutrophils, to try to make genetically encoded follow the leader system. That was a part of a team of approximately 10 people, from ranging from other first years at MIT to high schoolers from the United States, and two second-year mentors. That was a really enriching experience for us. It was our first time really working at an MIT lab, working on cells. We learned a lot of fundamentals and a lot of core skills on cloning, different synthetic biology tools, and others. After our first year, my brother and I joined different projects. So I primarily worked in the Professor Ed Boyden's lab, a part of at the time a part of the MIT Media Lab, but also in the McGovern Institute for Brain and Cognitive Sciences, where I worked on genetically encoded sensors for neurons. So I worked on creating sensors that could detect voltage, calcium, other small molecules that would be active in neurons, and how to build those into actual mouse derived neuron plates. And so that's what I did for most of my undergrad. Since then, my brother, he worked in the same lab at first. He worked on trying to build these sensors in zebrafish models. But then with the pandemic quickly approaching, my brother switched to more of a biological modeling project, looking at different ways to model the spread of COVID through different mathematical models. One thing that we were able to do separately in 2021 virtually was we were able to actually do some virtual work with the Synthetic Biology Center, the CSIR in South Africa, where we were looking at the spread and the evolution of different COVID-19 strains that came out of the region, and thinking of ways to try to develop biotechnology, specifically vaccines, for places like sub-Saharan Africa and other places where things like refrigeration and other ways to preserve vaccines there was a challenge there. So all that work was pretty virtual, but this opened our eyes a lot to the idea of trying to develop technology and science for not just a U.S. context, but also the world, having a special focus in the African continent. And so now, as our PhD work, we shifted away from, I would say, immune cell, mammalian cell work. We primarily now work on bacterial synthetic biology. In short, our field pretty much works around climate change and agriculture, and thinking about how can we develop biotechnology to act as biofertilizers and other tools to help crops grow in limited resources and changing climates. As some of you have met us in person before, my brother and I have had the opportunity for the last 2 years to actually go to the African continent. 2 years ago, both to Kenya and Uganda. Last year, just to Kenya, where we were able to talk to researchers at a number of universities in the area, but also 2 years ago, actually view some agricultural maize fields in the Kisumu area of Kenya to better understand what farmers and agriculturalists are going through in their daily farming practices, and to see how we could develop biotechnology to interface with farmers where they are. And so a lot of our research now is trying to think about developing biotechnology in that context, not just for the industrialized farming process that the U.S. has, but also how you would develop biotechnology that could actually be utilized and implemented in more like small farmer, community-based agriculture, like a lot of the continent has. So that's our research. That is our research summary. And so now to get to why we are here, Malik.
Yeah. All right. So before we talk about, how to get one, let's first talk about generally, why you might want to get a PhD, and particularly, this is from the aim of a STEM PhD, and even more specifically a biology or life science-based PhD. So in terms of what you get out of it, the kind of obvious ones are you get many technical skills, whether it's wet laboratory or computational. You'll get a lot of experience in doing techniques, especially those that are relevant to your project, as well as the specialized knowledge that will come with doing your project. Being that a PhD culminates in this dissertation and thesis, you will essentially be a select expert, so to speak, on some field of your eventual choosing, which can be great, or as I'll say, you might not even use this field that much in your future, but that's perfectly okay as well. One of the biggest things that come out of a PhD, especially PhDs that deal with biology, because there's so many ways to solve a problem and ways that issues arise when you're doing biology research. You get a very, very in-depth skillful problem solving when an experiment, how you design an experiment. Basically, when an issue occurs, or you have a problem or hypothesis, how do you design an experiment that will get you the right answer? How do you prove that reason A was the reason why the experiment failed and not reason B? And you get this very nice analytical mindset on how you solve these unique problems on an independent or even a group basis. Another major one is communication skills. So whether it's writing for papers, writing your theses themselves, you will have to give many presentations through your defenses, your oral exams, various lab meetings, and also just being able to communicate science on various levels as you speak with professors, your peers, and things of that nature. Networking is another major advantage of getting a PhD and just the people that you will meet within your department, within your university, and potentially other ones. And then as well, you have the potential for increasing your publications and other academic-based accolades. Now, what to do with the PhD? A PhD is a very versatile degree. Some of the more obvious ones are academia, so being a professor and working at a university, in which case you run a lab as well as teach and do other things. Most common in the U.S. to become a professor is you would do a postdoctorate program after your PhD, which can be another 1 to 5, potentially even years, depending on how in-depth and the style of program. You can go into industry. Generally speaking, a PhD going to industry is helpful as it alleviates some of the years of I guess just working experience that you might have. So in terms of the level of position you can enter into a job at, will generally be higher than coming straight out of undergraduate. I will say a common misconception, though, is in terms of the amount of money you receive, depending on the job, sometimes going into industry might actually be better from a financial standpoint than getting a PhD. So just interesting things to keep in mind if financials is a primary concern. Another thing that a PhD can allow you to do is entrepreneurship. So, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we are, there's a very big startup culture, as well as in many other cities and areas across the world. But a PhD also helps as you gain these skills, and not just research, but management and planning and things like that. A PhD is a very nice degree if you want to begin your own company. Oftentimes, continuing off of an interesting aspect of your PhD research and trying to formulate that into a full company. And then there's also just careers that translate these skills and aren't even directly related to research. A lot of people go into consulting. Again, you have that problem-solving expertise, and that allows you to work in a numerous amount of fields, whether it's in biology consulting. I know some people that have a life science PhD and now work in finance consulting. These skills are very transferable, and as well as general education and science communication skills, as I mentioned before, that you will develop. Now to talk about what are PhDs like in the U.S. Shall I take this, Miles?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, in short, in the United States, a PhD is so first off, I want to point out that it's a paid program. Generally speaking, most STEM PhDs are going to be a paid program. STEM, of course, meaning science, technology, engineering, and math. And so, if you are accepted, your tuition will be paid for by your lab, and you will receive a living stipend. This stipend, while not competitive to, say, an industry job, potentially, it is generally enough to live and eat. So it's a living stipend. I wouldn't call it so much of a salary, but again, generally speaking, you will likely not need to be working another job to sustain yourself while getting the PhD. As for its duration, in the U.S., it varies. So it is not a set length. I would say the average is anywhere from 4 to 7. But again, there is no exact end date of a PhD. Depending on the program you join. So one immediate thing that I know is a difference in the U.S. is that most PhDs you can enter with a bachelor's, and with a bachelor's degree. And generally speaking, that is the minimum requirement. There are people that join with masters. However, this is not a requirement, a technical requirement Some people may still decide to do a master's in order to increase their research experience and their coursework experience. But from a requirement standpoint, a bachelor's degree or an equivalent international degree is the equivalent. And then depending on what program you join, your PhD might include a master's or it might not. For example, my brother and I are in MIT's biological engineering PhD program. For us, the average duration of our program is about 5.5 years, and we just receive a PhD. If we were to say go to Stanford's bioengineering program, that program, you specifically get a master's degree for the first 2 years. And then after completing your master's, you then continue on to the PhD for an additional 3 to 4 years. But again, that depends on program. And then, of course, the main aspect of it is, again, you are performing independent research. You are joining a lab or sometimes you're co-advised between multiple labs, but you will be performing independent research, trying to develop new technologies, new ideas, new knowledge, which you will eventually have to defend in a council to a council of faculty, which will and then as well as write your formal dissertation on said subject, in which case you will then officially complete the program and receive your PhD. In addition to the pure research, different departments will have many other different requirements that you will be doing. The most common one is classes, how many classes you take and which ones and what types are they, are incredibly differing based on department and program you join. You will often have to teach. Yes, yes, he wrote in the chat, but I'll also repeat it just because I also want to emphasize it as well. Yes, in the United States, you do not need a master's degree to join a PhD. You just need a bachelor's degree. Yeah, and so yes, I believe that in certain other parts of the world, a master's degree is required beforehand, but then as your PhDs are also, I think, shorter in length. In the US, a PhD either includes the master's or has a portion that is equivalent of a master's, but generally speaking, you apply for them, or I'll say you are eligible to apply for them after your bachelor's. Although again, some people still might elect to do a master's or get industry experience to further enhance their application, but again, it's not a hard requirement to. Yeah, so back to requirements, you often will have to teach in the form of what we call TAing or teaching assistant. So you will often be paired with a professor and help them in teaching a class through office hours, recitations, perhaps even lecturing. You will have some varying amount of qualifying exams. This can be written exams based on subject material or classes you've taken, as well as oral exams and thesis proposals where you have to present your work or related work to faculty to show those skills, as well as sometimes you might have required presentations. Our program, for example, requires us to essentially give a short talk to our research to the general department as a requirement. That is generally what you will be doing during this PhD and how long it lasts. Yeah, Miles, if you want to now talk a little bit about what the application process is like, but first, generally what the timing is for applying for a PhD.
Yeah, so generally speaking, the PhD processes are already open. So at this current point, I wouldn't know of any school starting for the fall 2025 program. All of those applications would be open right now. Sometimes if you are not applying this cycle, but maybe would want to try to get experience in research. Over the summer, there are programs that you can apply for at universities. These would be listed on the university, where you could potentially go to that school and do research there for a summer, a couple weeks. There might be a grad school preparedness program, and so you can find those at different university websites. Those probably have ended for this cycle already, but right now it's basically application season. So you would apply anywhere between now and roughly the end of November, mid-December. Really depends on the school. And I will get into this on the next slide, but when the applications say they are due, all aspects of the application are due at that time, unless the school specifically says otherwise. That means all the aspects, your statement, your scores, your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, all of those are due at that deadline. And some schools are very strict about that. After you apply, depending on the school, slightly different than maybe undergraduate programs where they tell you explicitly what the release day is for whether you get accepted or not. Many graduate programs have their own timelines, and they're not standardized even in the same department at each school. Sometimes you could hear about an offer to interview by the end of December. Many will be probably in the beginning of the next calendar year. So somewhere between January and February, you would hear back from a school, either sometimes with an immediate offer or acceptance or denial from the program, depending on if they do interviews. Many will be for an interview call if you get to that point, in which each school also has its own timeline for interviews. During COVID, many interview processes were virtual. Usually interviews involve a visit to the school, where you do interviews with professors at the school during your visit, typically for a weekend, maybe 2 to 3 days. After that interview weekend, if you were to be given a decision, that would be, let's say your interview was in January, you might get a decision in February or March. At that point, there might be another visit weekend, potentially, or not. It depends on the school. Some schools basically treat the interview weekend as the visit weekend. Others might have two, so it really depends on the program. I would say, generally speaking, it's usually the interview is the visit. And then decisions is pretty much all due the same day, around April 15th. If you were to get an offer, this would include an offer of acceptance and your financial award. You have to choose to decide on if you were going to accept the offer by mid-April, and then you would start the program the following either end of August or beginning of September. So that is the timeline. And so going more about what the requirements are, I've said these briefly. I will go through.
I can take this, Mel.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's just since you're doing the later part. Yeah. So, all applications are different. I want to emphasize that it is important that you look up the requirements for the programs you're interested in very early, because all of these will differ, and when you have to have them by will differ. But here is a general list of all the things that you will likely need in some combination. So as I said, the main one is a United States bachelor's degree. Is probably the main academic requirement, or the international equivalent. I've sent a link here to a website, which essentially I think you can basically look up your school and your program, and it will basically say what the equivalent U.S. Degree is. Just in case, but I'm generally sure that any 4-year essentially degree would be equivalent here, but there is that tool available for you. A major part of your application, and some might say this is the bulk of your application, is what's called a statement of purpose, or it might be called a research statement or a personal statement. But all of these it's a 2-page essay that describes your research experience, your motivations for going to grad school, your research interests, and how you are a good match or a good fit to the program you are applying to. I'll say a bit more of this later, but this is it's a very short and succinct document, but very, very important, as this kind of accumulates all of your materials, and basically all of your materials will back up essentially what's in this statement. Is that another strong aspect is your letters of recommendation. We're generally 3, sometimes people say 2 to 3, but these are where professionals or academics that have been witnessed you in the research and academic journey are being able to speak on your behalf, being able to speak on your strengths, your work ethics, your interests, and things of that nature. I will say academic faculty are probably the most preferred in order to hear from. So professors at a university whose labs you've worked in or who can speak to your research skills are probably the strongest forms of letters. But you can also get letters from course instructors that might know you well, industry professionals that you've worked under. I will say for that, again, you want to kind of go as high up as they still know you. So, if you're so maybe not your direct supervisor, but maybe like the program supervisor that you were part of, or things of that nature. So it's a letter of recommendation. Your resume or CV. This is where you will generally list all of your skills, experiences, accolades, publications, anything of that nature. It is kind of just a very large document that kind of lists out everything. Note that while this is basically a list, your statement of purpose is like the why. So you want to really you want to highlight key parts of your CV in your statement, but also explain why and how that matches to the school. You're going to need your undergraduate transcripts. You're going to need your undergrad transcripts and your grades. Some schools have GPA minimums, many do not. So you want to keep that in mind. Most applications have a fee, but waivers are often available. Some schools will require you to take the GRE, which is a proficiency exam in advanced math and literature skills, although they're often not required, especially for biology and bioscience PhDs. And then, as our brother will talk about, for international students, there are the English exams.
Yeah, so just a brief note on these exams. For international students, these are English proficiency exams that are required to verify English language ability when you are doing work or education in an English-speaking country. There are different many universities require these to be submitted with your application. One thing I would like to note is that the different universities require different exam scores. So there's the TOEFL and the IELTS. Both of these are different exams. But for example, MIT wants IELTS scores and Stanford wants TOEFL. There are sections where you could email to see if they would accept scores from the other one. And so let's say you've taken one already, but the graduate website doesn't say it's required. You could send an email out to the that school's graduate admissions board for that program and see if they accept the other one. So if you have a question about that now, that was an email you can send out very quickly and you should get a response back. They vary on how they're taken. Some can be taken online, some can be taken in person at specific places and zones within your country. And those can be on paper or on the computer. The price of them do range based on the place, which test it is, which site, and what exam you're taking. Roughly, they cost between somewhere around 300 to 350 US dollars. Just as a conversion to Ugandan shillings, it's about 1 to 1.3 million Ugandan shillings for one of these exams. In terms of retaking them, each test has slightly different requirements. I know for the IELTS exam, there's a version where you could potentially retake one section of the 4 sections of the exam if you do bad, but it's specific sites allow that. So I put the website links there to read more about that. Another quick note, these can, depending on your different universities and where you did your undergrad, you might be waived for these exams. For example, if anyone here did their bachelor's degree at a English speaking or US university, you are generally speaking waived from submitting these scores. So I would have researched more on this if that doesn't apply to you, or if it does, but that's just something to keep in mind that you would have to prepare with your application as you submit it. And so now, going over all of those, I'd like to take a quick second to actually just like go through an example of applying if you were applying to MIT's biological engineering PhD, from going to the website, etc. What does that look like for a specific school? So this is the program my brother and I are in. And so the key deadlines is, like I said, MIT wants the IELTS test. They recommend that you take the test no later than November 15th to get scores back in time to submit with your application. And the application is due December 15th at midnight EST. And so MIT's application is due in December. You might want to apply somewhere else, and they're due at the end of November. So it's very good to maybe get a document, a spreadsheet, and have all the deadlines of all the different schools in one place so you can follow along. Hello? Oh, Ice, I believe you've unmuted, unless you're adding something. Okay, I think he unmuted by accident. Oh, sorry. And then the cost for the exam is $90. You can apply for a fee waiver on the website. I'll show you where it is. There's a place where you can apply for a fee waiver, which the department can give out for a variety of reasons. All you have to do is fill out a short form. And so if we were to go to that website right now, can you guys still see this website? So this is the official MIT BE web page. And so right here, if you looked up MIT biological engineering, you would go to this website. Right here, undergraduate exam, PhD program, how do I apply? You would go here, and they list many things. As a quick note, here on our front page, these are like 6 other programs that are similar to biological engineering that you might want to be interested in applying. One quick advice note: you do not want to apply to multiple programs at the same university. And for 2 reasons. One, professors talk a bit slightly, and so it is not in your benefit to apply to a lot of programs. And also, your interests most likely do not align with multiple programs. So really look at what each program specializes in and deciding which one you want to apply to. And so here there's a bunch of statistics on each class. They talk again about the same things we did about research experience that students have, GPAs, the fact that you need letters of recommendation. And so down here is the list of all the things you need. As I mentioned, MIT requires 3 people for letter writers. And the way MIT works, unless it's changed, is that you submit to them the email, and then you will get a draft email to send to your letter writers to say, please send a letter of rec to this site. many schools are like that, where you submit the email and either the school or you will then have to send the professor an email to submit the letter. So you do not submit the letter yourself. It comes directly from the letter writer. Something to note for your transcripts, PDFs are fine just to be evaluated. If you were to be accepted, you would need to send then an official copy of the documents. And here's some more information about testing. And then, as I mentioned, the fee waiver, you can click right here. You can click right here. It's through the graduate education. If depending on if you're U.S. or international, you can request a fee waiver. It's all the details are here on how you could possibly get one of those. So going back to our slides, want to get to some tips and advice before we get to questioning. And the first thing I'll say is, with all the details we gave you, I know there's a lot of information. Trying to tackle everything at once is a lot. And so I would just say, start your applications early. Even if you're thinking about a school, but you aren't sure if you officially want to apply there yet, you can still start the application, start listing what the requirements are. Chances are the requirements for one school are very similar to another one. So let's say you have to take this exam for this one school, but you don't even know if you want to go there yet. Chances are the next school you want to apply to, you'll have the same thing. Pretty much have understanding your letter writers and who you would want to write you a letter. You want to reach out to them early. They need time to write a letter, especially if it's been a while since you've interacted with them. Time for you to maybe have a conversation, to talk about your experience working with them or under them, things like that. And like I said, knowing the specifics about each program is very important, as well as understanding what each program focuses on, which gets to the bigger point of applying to multiple programs. I show the example of MIT Biological Engineering because that's the program I am in, and that is the one that I found that my research interests align the most to. But you'll find that each school does not do the same things within biological engineering. You might have a more agricultural focus. While we have some agricultural work here in biological engineering at MIT, it's not a large focus of the university. Other schools in the US might have a larger focus in agricultural studies if that's what you're interested in. And so one easy thing you can do is you can look up US universities with agricultural engineering PhD, and there's a lot of lists that will come up for that, and you can actually look at the different schools. Prestige and name of schools definitely adds to your background if you go to the school there, but many professors and labs are also very important when it comes to shaping your path in your career. And so the best professor or lab that is based on your interest might not be at MIT or Stanford. They might be at Urbana-Champaign in Illinois or Penn State, other schools. And so it's really important to know what you kind of want to focus on in shaping your application, especially if you want to get a PhD in the United States. There's different programs, and the selectivity for each program is also very different amongst different schools. And so, again, reiterating, if you are choosing to apply to one school, figure out which program makes the most sense for that school. Don't try to apply to all the programs in that school, because most likely it will not help your odds, and they wouldn't all be a match to what you want to do either. And so with that, my brother and I just want to say thank you for listening to our presentation. We are happy to take any and all questions that you have along this topic. And ICE also has some comments that he also wants to add before we do the questions. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to ICE for a couple of minutes.
Thanks a lot, Miles and Malik. That's a great explanation all over the process. So one quick thing that I want to add right away, since you just finished your presentation, is about the English proficiency exam. So since I took it myself, my personal experience about the TOEFL And the IELTS, I think that's what people call, is that like IELTS offer an in-person speaking session. So some of you who has never taken the English proficiency exams before may not be familiar with how it was tested, but like imagine you have to talk with the computer. That's not something that was easy, right? So the TOEFL, most of the time at this point, we only offer the internet-based exam, where you have to record your response to the speaking session. And sometimes like that's like another kind of skills. It may not be only the speaking skills, but it was like, the preparedness on how to respond in 45 seconds as well. So I think that was like, some key differences in those two specific English proficiency exams. While the IELTS offer the in-person interview, where there will be the people from the institute that will talk with you and will score you based on how you respond to the questions. So let's say if you cannot respond everything in 45 seconds sharp, but you do it in 1 minute, that's you might still get like a very good score based on the in-person like speaking test, for example. And to my understanding, I believe that the TOEFL exam is based on the American-based English, while the IELTS one is more gearing towards the British English. So it depends on like how much familiar you are with these exams. You might prefer one over the other. And most universities will accept TOEFL, at least in the US, mainly because ETS or the institute that provide this test is based in the US. So they kind of like, have sort of connections throughout the country. IELTS are mostly accepted because it's also like globalized. But the score conversion may be a little bit, tricky between institutions, because they may require the IELTS that has like the score band that was much more strict than the TOEFL one. So for example, the TOEFL has a score out of 120. So you can have the score of like more than 85 or more than 90. That was something that like, you can change pretty easily. While for the IELTS, I think the band is by 0.5. Sometimes they require 7, they require 8, or 7.5. So the band for the IELTS is a little bit, harder to change, in my experience, because like you have to go up 0.5 at a time. It's like out of 8 or 9. I can't remember exactly. That's why, like personally, I was preferring the TOEFL much more. The other thing that was like a clear difference for those two exams is the writing part, where I believe like, at the time, like it was like almost 10 years ago now, that I took the exam. But the IELTS may allow you or like ask you to write with the pen, while TOEFL asks you to type it down. And that's the two different things that, people who are trained in English may have like, different skills, because like typing and writing is two unique skills. And especially if you're limited by time, maybe if you type faster, you might prefer one over the other. So that's like, the overall comments on the English proficiency section that I want to reflect on my personal experience. And if you, like if you have any friends who has taken these exams or like preparation before, make sure to like get in touch and like talk more on this preparation, because it costs a lot to take any exam. So you don't want to take it too many times, right? I have a question and also like maybe a discussion that we can take it further, Miles and Malik. I think we can touch a little bit on like how the lab selection is oriented in the US or like in different, universities. Like for example, if you apply to the PhD position in Europe, you are more likely to apply to a lab because it's more like a job description and you apply directly. However, in the US, it's quite different. There are some programs that you apply and you're applying to the actual program, but you will be listing the professors who you might be working with. And each university do it very differently. Maybe let's touch on that a bit.
Yes. No. First of all, thank you, Ice, for your personal testimony and advice towards the English proficiency exams. My brother and I only know them at a very high level. But I think your perspective was very useful to the students here. And then yes, I'll just stop sharing my screen. We will have these slides sent out, by the way, so you guys will have a copy of them. So don't worry about memorizing anything. We will be able to give you these slides. Yes, the application process when it comes to choosing a lab, as I mentioned, programs are very specific, but also you want to be interested in specific labs. One good piece of advice I have is you might know a professor in a program, but if they're the only professor that you would work under at that school, it probably isn't a best fit because you don't know if that person is taking students or if you'll be able to get into that lab, because a lot of programs are rotation based, in which, especially in biological engineering, in which when you apply to the school, you apply to the program, and in your personal statement, you might list some are rotation, some aren't, but like for example, in Mech E, like in mechanical engineering, you do apply to a lab. So it really does vary on the school and the program. But for MIT BE, you in your personal statement might say, I'm interested in synthetic biology. I think my research interests align with this professor, and this professor. But those are actually not binding in your personal statement. When you decide, if you get accepted and you decide to enroll, once you join the program, you might decide, I want to rotate with those professors I mentioned, or you can rotate with other professors. And so it's really important in the application to understand if that school has a rotation process or not, because you don't want to say, I would like to join this professor's lab if that program is not based on getting accepted by a lab. And so that is a very key difference that you'd want to talk around. And so going back to what I was saying, with programs that aren't lab acceptance based, you really want to think about if the program provides a community of professors that you think you could work with. There were some schools that I was thinking of applying to, but there was really only like one professor that I was interested. And so I didn't end up applying because it was just one lab out of the 20. And so I didn't think that the program would have been a best fit for me. So I would say with any program that you're considering, see if there's any like 3 to 5 professors that you could see yourself working in. And then of those, you could put in your personal statement, based on my interest in XYZ, these professors and their work on this seem to align with what I want to do. But again, those would be non-binding statements. If the application says apply to a lab and list, then it'd be different. But there is a very sharp difference depending on what program you're applying to and what their process is like.
Just a brief addition to that, in addition to the actual rotation process, I will say it's also important to, again, look at the non-research requirements between, especially if you're looking at program within the same school. For example, in our school, biological engineering and chemical engineering share some faculty. So, you could go to either program and then work with those professors, for example. But now you're looking at, okay, what courses would I be taking in each program? Or what are the qualifying exams like in those programs and things like that. So you also want to, in addition to what the lab rotation structure is like, you also want to compare departments on just general program styles.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks a lot, Miles and Malik. Yep, go ahead, Tato.
Okay, thank you so much, Malik and Miles, for such wonderful presentation. I would like to bring to all participants' attention that it's time for questions. If you have any question, please, you can type it in the chat. If you can't type, you can unmute yourself and speak to us and speak to Malik and Miles. They will clear whatever question you have. Okay, thank you, Luis. You can go ahead.
Yeah, we have like one hand raised from Bakunda. I mean, if you wanna type it down, or if you wanna unmute and talk about it, please go ahead, Bakunda.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Miles and Malika, for your presentation, as well as Mr. Ice for this opportunity. I was asking about well, some of us, me personally, I'm a first year student doing my course of biochemistry and zoology, but I was really so interested in the synthetic biology bit. I've been in touch with Mr. Emma because I really want to do the online course, the intermediate course, and I was just asking when we shall actually maybe like start the intermediate course for the next for this actual year. I've seen some other people have already actually finished, so that's just my question. I was just putting up that. Thank you.
Okay, that question will be answered later after this session. We shall send you an email because it's not part of this session. Thank you so much. Jacqueline, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emma, for this platform. You're really doing a good job, and congratulations for that. Thank you so much also, Ice, and thank you as well as Miles and Malik. Yeah, so my question is, okay, for me, I graduated last year in August with a double major of biomedical science and also biotechnology. And I have this passion of getting a scholarship. Actually, I'm still in the process of applying some. So my question is about the recommendation letters. Is it that we have to send the links to the academias for them to be able to write for us, or are there are there any other situations whereby they write you a recommendation letter as a PDF, and then now you attach together with your with the other documents? So that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Malik.
Yeah, great question. Generally speaking, and this will vary based on program or scholarship or fellowship, but generally speaking, I think it's a general practice that the student is not supposed to see the recommendation letters. Now, I am aware that sometimes your professor might have you write your own recommendation letter, or things to put in your letter, but generally speaking, your recommendation
The
letter,
recording has stopped.
I think, are not supposed to be seen by the student, or at least officially. So as a result, most programs have some very specific way to submit the letter, in which case, whether it's some combination of either you give the program the email of the professor, or you give the writer a link to the application. But generally speaking, the letter writer themselves will have to submit the letter. It's very rare that like you would be able to like manually attach direct letter to the application, because again, you're technically like not supposed to like see it, basically, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
This meeting is being recorded.
A couple questions in the chat. Yeah, Miles asked the questions about again having a bachelor. So again, if you have a bachelor's, that is generally enough to apply for a program. Again, you might want to still get a master's or have research or get work experience to boost your application. But in terms of eligibility, you just need a bachelor's, and whether the program you apply to comes with a master's varies by the program itself. I see we have
Khadija, if you would like to ask your question.
Yes, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Actually, I'm doing undergraduate second year student. So my question is, what will be better for us of doing PhD after my graduation or doing PhD after my master's? I have heard that you have to face a lot of pressure of research during doing this PhD. So, according to a graduate student, I think it will be quite tough to face this research pressure for students. If you have a master's degree, so you will have a better experience of on research. So I think what will be best for us doing PhD after applying PhD after graduation or after master's?
Yeah,
Okay, so this
I
is
agree.
yes, this is a great question on when you should apply. I will say there is no like application benefit to like there's no like preference if you have a master's already or if you do not have a master's. So it's not like people with masters have a better chance. It is whenever you as the applicant feel that your application will be strongest to get into these programs, which are highly selective. For example, they want to see experience in research. And for you, if you do not have as much research opportunities in your undergraduate career and you would like to spend more time learning more research and getting more familiar with research by doing a master's first, then that might be the plan for you. What I will say is these PhD programs in the United States know they're taking students out of bachelor's programs, and it's not like every year of the 6-year program you have to publish a paper. Like for my brother and I, this is our 3rd year. We have not published yet. Like I have no published works under my name at this current moment. And these first 2 years has been primarily taking classes and learning how to do research. And so now I am developing my thesis proposal on what my thesis will be, in which now that I'm generating data, I could start publishing soon. And so I say that to say that these PhD programs are still training based. So they're equipped to train people who just have a bachelor's how to do better research and function in these labs. But in that they take students that show they will be able to succeed in these highly research intensive positions. So like I said, it comes down to a personal preference on when do you think you will have the background and understanding necessary to go through that program.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to answer another question in the chat about scholarships. I know this comes up a lot, and so I want to say 2 things. One, again, a PhD in the United States is funded. Like if you were accepted, or it will say it on the website if it's funded, but they generally speaking are funded, especially in the STEM sciences, which means if you were to get an acceptance letter from a university for a PhD program, you will also be getting an award letter that basically says the university will be covering your tuition and will be giving you a stipend for your living expenses. So you do not need a fellowship or scholarship if you were accepted into these programs. Number 2, there are fellowships that you can apply for. And so I want to use this as this moment. I just looked up roughly, I'll put it in the chat here. This is from our Office of Graduate Education. Some of these you would not apply for until you join the program, maybe the summer before, but these are fellowships. So you can think of them as scholarships, but for graduate school. And so fellowships vary by which program you apply for them in, what background. Some are geared specifically for international students. Some have international student eligibility. This website lays out directly who's able to apply for each fellowship, and when you apply, changes. Some of these you would apply for before you apply to graduate school. Some of these you would apply for once you're in a program. And there's different benefits and such to getting a fellowship. It's many times it might not actually be, so to speak, a raise, but if there's a professor that you would want to work with at a university who doesn't have funding for students, if you have a fellowship that might help you be able to work in that lab if you come with your own funding. But again, these aren't required for you to have a funded PhD. And so they're available, but I would say for right now, the focus should just be on applying and just checking if the program you're applying to, if it's funded, which the answer should be yes. So hopefully that answers that question about funding.
Yeah, let me add another clarification to that point. If you click to the link that Miles and Malik shared, you see a lot of lists, and please check on whether on the eligibility very clearly, because there are a lot of fellowships or scholarships that are gearing toward international students particularly. So the meaning of these is because the pool of applicants will come from different pool. So if you are trying to compete with an overall grants that are eligible by everyone, that's going to be a very difficult one. If you're going for the ones that are more towards the international students, then the pool is smaller. If you're applying for the one from your local government, that's going to be an even smaller pool. So the competitiveness will be very different. The other thing that I would like to mention is that there are other cases where you come with this scholarship before joining a lab as well. For example, if you were supported by a foundation or the government scholarship, similar to what Kato has got when he got into his master, you can actually get into the program with the external support, and that may raise the chance of getting accepted into the PhD program in some cases as well, because the program will see that you are pre-selected or pre-screened, so you are already you have already been accepted by the other awards. So the program will see that okay, this person must be the fit for the program, something like that. So that's our another angle of the scholarship or the application process as well. But again, I want to emphasize what Miles and Malik has shared, that if you are coming to the PhD program in the US, you will be paid. You will not be paying for your own PhD tuition. You will have the stipend during your PhD study, no matter what. That's by the law. So yeah, if your professor are running out of grants to pay you, then you'll be in a situation where you may have to work with a university as a graduate student assistant or teaching assistant or some kind of assistant, but you will be paid. That's a very important point that we have to make here.
Yes. Yeah, and just adding on that about things about guarantees. If you are accepted into a program, the program must have funding for you. It might not be in, let's say, a lab that you wanted to join originally, but especially that's why the rotation process happens in many of these programs. The professors that have rotation students are professors that have funding for students. And this is another thing. You will join a lab. This is this once you get in, this is a bit of anxiety that students might have. The program, you will find a lab to join. The program will make sure that you go through the rotation process and you join. There is not going to be something where if you do not find a lab by X moment, you will be kicked out of the program. The program will work with you and you will find a lab to join, and then you would get funding. So if you apply to a program and you don't know which lab you'd want to join, that's also completely fine. Right? You'd want to mention what maybe labs you think you could be interested in, but you don't need to have a specific lab in mind that if you get in, but they don't take you, you're not in the program anymore. That's not a thing. So I don't want that to be anything. I don't want anyone to be confused about that as well.
But again, you do want to, in saying that, you also want to, that's why it's important to apply to a program that as you're applying to, again, unless it's a program where you actually apply to faculty, but speaking on the bioengineering, life science fields where you're normally doing rotation, you are applying to the department. And so you want to make sure that just the general aims and focuses of the department is kind of interest to you. So you'll have wide options for faculty. All right, a quick question in the chat. my interest in medical microbiome. Is it possible to get this program at PhD? My short answer is most likely. I will say that's relatively specialized, and this just comes into research of programs. MIT, for example, has a microbiology PhD program. I don't know what their applications are, but maybe they're medically focused, but I'm sure there are schools that have this. And from any field of interest you may have, it's very important to look up universities and programs that have these backgrounds. And going back from something from my PowerPoint, it's also very important. I want to just clarify this is a slight tangent, but I just want to emphasize this again about just making sure you're casting a wide net, as we say, as to what schools you apply for. The big names have many resources and have many things attached to them, but I do want to point out the caveat that the incoming cohorts are very small. For example, MIT BE accepts 5%. 5% of applicants get to the interview process, and our average cohort size is maybe 25 students come every year. And of those, not somebody would say are international on average. Less than 5, less than 3.
Yeah, it's roughly, yes.
Roughly. And so just pointing that out that, there are other schools that do similar work and have very strong departments, but they accept more students, and you'll see that they actually have higher percentages of international students. So I just want to also encourage you to really research your fields and schools, and you might find universities that you might not already know about, but they do great research, and your likelihoods of acceptances and stuff might be higher.
For example, and when I mean look up your field, like when I wanted to do synthetic biology, I looked up synthetic biology PhD US, and synthetic biology specifically wasn't exactly a PhD program at many schools, but then a bunch of schools that had synthetic biology as a focus in their PhD programs showed up. So if you look up microbiology PhD US universities, you will find a list of all the universities that have that as a specific program, or department programs that include a microbiology focus. And that's how you can literally search, and it'll be better for you to do it that way than, let's say, starting at a big name and seeing if they have it, because if they show up with that program, that means it's a specialty of that school. Abdul Kareem.
Abdul, please, go ahead and unmute.
Okay, bro, do you want to speak? I can listen. I can wait for minutes, no problem.
No. I'm just, trying to call it out. Go for it.
Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for sharing your knowledge with us, because it is very important for us. My name is Abdul Karim, what is written there, and I am from Tanzania, but currently I am in India now. I am doing internship, but I want to go to take postgraduate studies, either a master's degree, or if I got direct PhD admission, it will be much more better. So I want to ask you a question. First question will be about cold emails. The email which we sent to directors, to professors, showing that we have interest to join their groups as a postgraduate students. That is an option which I have had from some people, especially my supervisor gave me that option. But here you are telling us about applying directly to the university website, which is another option also. Both of these options I have had and I have practiced to them, but I want to learn from your experience, which option do you think it is much more better, or which option do you think I can have like a high chance for me to get admission to the university?
I see. So I'll say in the United States, it is very unlikely to work in a university lab as a pure researcher with a bachelor's degree. And I'll clarify that with this. So let's say I graduate with a bachelor's in bioengineering or biology, something like that. If I want to work in a university lab, it would do research, you will need to go through a formal program, most likely. That will either be a master's degree, a PhD, or on a very rare case, there's something called a post-bac or a post-baccalaureate program, which is kind of like this 1 to 2 year specialty program. That's the focus of then going to PhD. So it's kind of like this intermediate thing, and that's like very specific, and it's through like the NIH or very specific group, so it's not as common. There are things that are called like research technicians, which are people that work in university labs, but they are not necessarily researchers. They sometimes do have their own projects, but generally speaking, their works are more how'd you phrase it, Mouse? Kind of aiding in lab functions. You know, it's more of it's above staff, but again, you're not a researcher primarily.
It
You're
is
kind
like
of
a lab technician, like a lab
exactly.
technician.
Let me help add that in, Malik. I think it's more of you're doing the same technique, yet but you may not have to complete the whole project.
Mhm.
So if you're a technician, you have a very specialized technique. You can work on that, but you may not have to stay as long as a PhD student or postdoc for a couple of years to complete the whole project. You can fit in.
Okay, thank you very much for your information. But my question was like, between these two options, like of applying PhD program or postgraduate degree in US, which one is best between sending cold emails to professors, like I'm writing email, or applying directly to the university website? Like, which
Oh, I
option is
see.
best according to you?
Okay, I will answer this. Okay, so because I didn't mention this. Okay, in the United States, the process for admission into a graduate program is standardized through application. So no professor would accept you through a cold email. The most they would do if you were to get a reply is to refer you to their graduate application process. Very rarely, if you are interested in a professor's research, you could email asking, let's say, if they are accepting students within the next year, but a professor would not accept you into the program. So if you are interested in working under a professor, you still have to go through the application process, in which if you get in, you can then get connected with that professor.
The only
yes, even if it's a program that where you apply to a lab, you still apply through the application process.
You might, in that particular case, you might reach out to the professor being like, hey, I'm interested in your lab. Can we talk about your work? And the professor will be more likely to answer because they know that in their program you apply directly to a lab. But even still, you still have to go through the formal process. But especially in like the life sciences and like the biological sciences where it's rotation based, you have to go through the formal process. And I will say it's actually to your detriment sometimes to cold email professors. A couple professors, like 1 or 2 at a university, is okay, but the more professors you like directly reach out to, because professors talk to each other, and things like that. So it's actually to your detriment sometimes if you are reaching out to too many professors at one place. But yes, if you are trying to do any kind of graduate program, yes, you have to go through the official process, and the professors have very little influence on that.
Yes, and I just want to say on a different note, because it keeps coming up in the chat and I have to run after I make this point, but I thought I'd run through this example in front of y'all to see, just so y'all could see, like, again, how you could find a degree. Each one of you, based on your experience and what you want to do, might like apply to a different program. I cannot say blanket all of you should apply to MIT BE because it might not be the direct focus for you, right? And so someone asked about bioinformatics as an example. And so as a test case, you know, if you are interested, if your program has a degree or not. So I'm just going to like look up bioinformatics PhD programs U.S. universities, because I don't have the answer top of my head. And already, here's a website, and they list. Here is a list of many schools that, in one way, shape, or form, has something related to bioinformatics as a PhD. And so, if I were to just click a random one, here's bioinformatics at Georgia Tech. I click it and I go. And so if I look up now, bioinformatics PhD, Georgia Tech, here is the university website. Here is the university website that describes the program, and here are the requirements for that program. Right. And so I'm showing this as an example of, if you're interested in a field and you don't know what universities could offer it, you can do a cold search of that topic, find the university program, and operate off of the university program website and follow that follow that website. That is the direction that you want to go in applying to programs and finding programs. And that is the only official way you can apply to a specific school's program. So I actually have to hop off right now, but Malik, I can stick around for a bit more. And so I actually want to thank all of you for the opportunity of talking today. Thank you, Emma Ice, for organizing this. SynBio4ALL is a great program, and I'm happy to finally be helping you with this. I encourage you all of you the best of luck if you are applying this cycle. Feel free to reach out for any questions. But again, like, there is a lot of personal research that you have to do in trying to find a program that works for you, which is why it's very important to start early, as there are many options that could be a best fit for you. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Miles, and maybe let's see you around on campus. Yeah, I mean, if there is any other question, I think Malik can help share some insight with us as well. I have a slide or two prepared about the postdoc, and I think I want to just show it to you right now, and we don't have to go through it. But if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me later. I'm just gonna show the screenshot of what I was talking with my friend, where there are different kind of fellowships in Europe and in the US. So these are some lists, and they're the key thing that I want to mention here is that a lot of fellowships, not just postdoc, but also for the PhD, might be restricted to the country or to the kind of institution that you're working on as well. And these are some kind of international student eligible fellowships in the US that I look for. Some will require you to do specific requirement, like the Human Frontier, that you have to go outside the US. And there are also some other institute or city specifics. The interesting thing about this kind of information is that sometimes there are an equivalent PhD fellowship that was available at the institute as well. So, like what Malik and Miles has been sharing, make sure that you look into the opportunities of those scholarships and see if you're eligible, and maybe that would boost your opportunity to join the program to a certain extent if you have the scholarships that was connected to the university. So these are something that I'll bring it up later on when we talk about postdoc. Especially, we are working with the EDRC consortium, where we'll have that workshop organized about the international people-oriented system. So I'll share with everyone again. So please stay tuned. If there is any other question, please feel free to raise it up. I think we'll stay for only maybe 2 or 3 minutes, just so that Malik can raise, and we can come back and connect through email if you guys wanted to.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you so much, Ait and Malik. To add on, just a few words. For people who are scared of doing a PhD directly, I can help with applying masters, because for me, I'm currently in Europe doing my master's. So I can help you if you're scared of doing a PhD directly from undergraduate. If you're scared of doing a PhD from US, looking for a PhD from US, you can reach out to me. I can help you on how best to look up for master's degrees around Europe, because at least I have that experience. Yeah. Thank you. Back to you, Malik, if you have anything, or maybe if there is more question. If there is no more question, I would like Malik also to conclude, and we end today's session so that Malik can also rest. Yeah.
Yeah. If no one has any additional questions, I'll just summarize again. Yes, there's some
Thank you very
major.
much.
Yeah, I'll just summarize with just some major takeaways again. First and foremost, yeah, thank you all for listening. The best way to reach is that if you go on our website, which I will just make sure I have LinkedIn account. Basically, if you just look up my name, Malik George, Malik George and Miles George, you should find our LinkedIn. Relatively easy. If you want to contact us as well, we also have malikandmiles.com. You can also reach out to us there. But yeah, so major takeaways are, again, thank you all for listening. I would encourage you all to spread this knowledge to your peers. Again, as the PhD process and requirements are very different in the US. And again, it can be a lot of opportunity for you. Depending on the program you apply to, will dictate how much prior research experience you will need for admission, which I also want to emphasize, as for some of you who might not have as much research experience and are fearful of the idea of joining into a PhD already. Not all PhDs expect a high level of research experience, but of course, the higher level school you apply to, they will require that kind of experience. And again, and the biggest thing is, again, a lot of personal research into programs. Unlike undergrad, graduate school is incredibly program specific, and you really want to make sure that you're applying into a group of faculty, research area, and all of that that's going to be of your interest, so that when you do apply, your application you match well. That's a very big part of the admissions process, is not just your experience and things like that, but how well you match to the school. Not to single you out, for example, but let's say you're saying you have a super interest in bioinformatics and machine learning and all of that. Not to say that, for example, bioengineering doesn't do that, but for example, if you're like really computational and things like that, the program might lead your application and say, hey, we don't think we should admit you because you would probably be a better fit for the computer science, for the computational biology program at MIT. But at the same time, if you do not apply to that program, then you're stuck where, our program said you want a good fit, but then you didn't apply to the program where you would be a good fit. So it's really, really important to research all of these programs in depth from a variety of schools. But with that, yeah, thank you all for listening, and best of luck in your future application and research endeavors.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Malik, for that wonderful session. And thank you so much, Ice, for all the comments and everything. And thank you, everyone, for coming in. Just in case you need much more information, please, you can follow SynBio4ALL Africa on LinkedIn, on Twitter at SynBio4ALL, or you can directly follow me on LinkedIn, Emma Sebunya Kato, or on Twitter at Kato Sebunya A. Then you can also send us an email, SynBio4ALL at gmail.com. We shall always respond to you. Or our WhatsApp group and our Slack channels. We are there to serve you, and our services are free of charge. At any time you need anything, please reach out to us. You can conclude the webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tato. One thing I want to say before we adjourn is that, like, we had our beginner course and intermediate course in synthetic biology. The beginner course, you can see it on our website right now, but the intermediate course, we have other recordings that we can share, we have other materials, but it will take a little bit of time to share that. We are working on it and it should be shared soon. So please stay tuned. And, once it's up online, you see it like advertised on LinkedIn or on Twitter as usual. So, if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact through email. Other than that, I think I would like to express the gratitude to both Malik and Miles, who share a lot of insight with us today in the PhD program application. And my apologies that I couldn't connect properly in the earlier session because I'm still traveling. But yeah, thanks everyone for attending again, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon in the next session. We'll try to make it monthly. All right, I think I'll stop the recording right now, if that's okay.